right, welcome into the Rewatch Reaction Show. Paul Dehner Jr. here with Charlie Goldsmith. Before we go any farther, we left everyone on a cliffhanger yesterday, Charlie, as we ended the walkout wondering, would Charlie make his flight? I see you made it back to Cincinnati, but did you make it back to Cincinnati last night?
I made it back to Cincinnati. The flight from Miami to Atlanta was delayed by 30 minutes, but I would have made the original flight in the first place anyway. I also thought, though, could you imagine if I didn't make it and I was recording this from the airport in New Jersey and I was like, no, I didn't make it. So fortunately, that's not the world we live in.
No, good for you. I like that you wanted to specify, look, yeah, it did get delayed, but I didn't need it. I made it. So well done. Good job by you. That said, great to have everybody here. We in the coach's office today. We're going to be joined by James Casey, Bengals tight ends coach, after a banner day, really for everyone, but definitely in his room. Mike Gesicki with a touchdown, Drew Sample with a big catch and run, and a touchdown run for Chase Brown out of 12 personnel. We're going to take you inside some of those plays. James is as passionate of a position coach as you will meet in the NFL about the job that he does, and I believe that will be very clear after you hear our conversation with him.
I don't think there's anyone on the Bengals staff, with all due respect, who is more of an expert about their position than James. I think James is the tight end guy more than anyone else is associated with it. Maybe it's because he was a tight end for as long as he was, but he's certainly a favorite on the staff.
Yeah, well, and I know at every mention Zach Taylor can, whenever talking about tight ends, make sure to call James Casey the best tight ends coach in football. And I would say if you look at some of the production that tight ends have had when they have come to Cincinnati, I think Burrow deserves a lot of that, and James Casey deserves a lot of that too. And they certainly have a very interesting room. We'll talk to him about that and about some other things when we get to him. First, before we get into that, where'd you start?
I started with the turnovers, and then I went through the defensive game as a whole. And I guess my tagline about the defensive performance in Miami is everything that I thought about this game was wrong. Because for the turnovers, which were the story, all right, great, Bengals forced a bunch of turnovers. On a rewatch, I ended up just having criticisms of Mike McDaniel and what the heck the Dolphins were thinking. We're running a quarterback sneak with an undersized rookie 7th-round pick who then just falls. On 3rd and 14, your yak play is for a tight end who was on the practice squad for most of the season and is a blocking tight end. That led to Jordan Battle's forced fumble. Another practice squatter couldn't make a catch, surprise, surprise, on the tipped pick from Newton to Carter. So while you can pick your nits with those plays, and those plays are representations of, all right, the defense played great, but look who they were facing. There were some real star moments that were just as impressive, if not even more so, than what I thought the turnovers were. We shouldn't be talking about the turnovers. What we should be talking about is some of the edge setting, the physicality, the effort, the hustle, and the speed from Myles Murphy. We should be talking about the best tackling instinctual game of Dax Hill's career, some hustle moments from guys like Jordan Battle. And then not just Jalen Davis's pick, his TFL before halftime as well. There were these subtle plays that changed the whole game and then forced viewers to go into turnover mode with practice squatters and combust. But I just want to make sure we highlight these underrated plays that really were the ones that won the game.
I'm with you. I mean, when you look at the way the first half was playing out, there's a reason that it felt very back and forth. It certainly didn't feel like it was going to be a day that would end 45-21. And those changed because the Bengals were able to change the game script. And if that was a game where the Dolphins were going to be able to utilize what they do best, and against their biggest advantage was their explosive run game against the Bengals run defense that gives up explosives. That was how you saw the Bengals losing this game. And the way that they could put it away was force it to turn into a Quinn Ewers game. And once they were able to do that, because of a couple of these plays that you mentioned, what happened right before halftime, and then the turnover that turns into points, and suddenly everything changes. Suddenly it goes from their best on the Bengals' worst trait to the Bengals' best traits, all winning everywhere else. And so that I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that is certainly where it changed. Let's go to a couple of those here real quick and talk about some of the ones. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with, I guess, the tone setter, like early in the game, that Jordan Battle end around. Do you have it? And I talked to Jordan about this one today.
Yeah. Let's bring it
So
up.
the Dolphins are trying to run the ball early. They run an end around, or an end around reverse. And it's those type of misdirection plays have been a problem for the Bengals all season. They were a problem consistently, even on Sunday from the Miami Dolphins. But this end zone view is a perfect encapsulation. Jordan Battle starts high, climbs down at the snap. The Dolphins snap the ball, handoff all the way wide, toss back going to the receiver the other way. And Jordan Battle crosses and outruns across the entire field, Jalen right to the spot. Jordan Battle basically goes from like the left hash, let's call it, and meets with pure hustle Jalen Wright on the right sideline. He played the run, and then he still found a way to make it all the way across the field for a physical tackle to finish. And for a guy whose open space tackling has been his biggest flaw, the thing he knows he needs to improve the most. This was a big play that reminded me even a lot of Miles Murphy's hustle play a couple weeks ago. It was in Baltimore. This was Jordan Battle's version of that shows some progress.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically when you just watch him outrun some of his own teammates all the way across the field here, and to come down to see it, recognize it fast enough, and realize, okay, I got to get there. I mean, think about what this play. Now, granted, you have somebody who comes up behind him, but this could have been certainly a lot worse. We've just been hearing so much about the belief in Jordan Battle recently. And I think it's some of the stuff like this where it's like, okay, these are winning plays in the NFL. These are starting level guys you can count on make these plays. Now, you also need guys that don't make as many mistakes. I think those are far more limited with Jordan, at least in the second half of the season. I think as things have settled around him, he's looked more settled, and he brings more juice and energy than almost anybody on that back end, and that's valuable for where they're at too. I think these are the types of plays that you point to when you hear them say, we think we can build around Jordan Battle, which is they need as many guys they could actually build around at this point as they can find.
We're being cautious about this defense. We always will.
Yeah.
Since the bye, or at the bye, let's just say, I wasn't sure that Jordan Battle was going to be a starter in the 2026 Bengals. I feel pretty good now, confident now.
Yeah.
He's in my mock off-season spreadsheet already as the Bengals starting strong safety, and that's a reflection of the performances that he's had over the last couple games, and examples like this are good reflections of the technical improvements that he's made and just the extra gear he's starting to be able to tap into. He's not a finished product, and even when he is, he's probably not going to be this great safety, but this is good stuff that's a part of what they're building around.
Another thing that's helped in sort of stabilizing that back seven, and we mentioned Jalen Davis yesterday, and I want to get to that, but another part of this is the Dax Hill move that's also part of the Jalen Davis arrival. You know what? Thinking, okay, yeah, he could be natural at nickel. I think he was doing fine in there. It really seems like he's just an outside corner. And I think as we see the value of corners tackling in this league, so many teams try to do what Miami does, right? Miami is attacking the edges, attacking these undersized cover corners with run game, and finding ways to do that, utilizing misdirection to put those guys in a bind when the linebackers maybe can't get there or whatever. Corners that are big and are able to make big plays in space and tackle are more valuable now than they've ever been. And I think Dax, with his background and built like a safety and all that stuff, but also has the skills physically to play and cover as an outside corner, has shown, I think, this is maybe where he belongs since he's moved back out there. That feels like it's been more apparent this year. This play is a great example of it here. You point this one out. He's up at the top of your screen. They try to get him isolated. He does this dip under and pops up to make this play. What a great tackle, Charlie.
What I'm calling this is like he did a burpee. Like you've done those, right, Paul? Where you
not many
dive down and then you jump up. But then imagine, and then instead of just jumping up, you have to tackle, that's Jalen Waddle, right? You have to tackle Jalen Waddle right after you complete a burpee. It reminded me of like a army crawl drill. Like this is one of them, and what we'll hear from Al Golden in a second, he confirmed it. One of the more freaky athletic plays that frankly I've ever seen. And if you can do this and you can defend man on man like Dax has been guarding ever since he moved outside. I haven't done the tally yet, but it's like he's allowed 5 catches since he moved outside. Like that's a real player, man. Do we have the Al Golden sound? Here's Al Golden talking about he was even more impressed by this play than I was.
Dax is doing the same now. I think Dax is really comfortable right now. He's probably playing his best football. I told him last night after game his play on the flare pass was as good as anything I've seen this year. Because when the ball was released, it looked like it was going to be a huge game. They had Walker in space, and you don't want those guys in space. Those receivers that they have out of the backfield. And he slipped the block outside, got on his feet, made the tackle for 1 yard gain. I couldn't believe when I went to call the second down play. I couldn't believe it was 2nd and 9. So it's a tribute to him.
This goes back into something that later in the day Dan Pitcher said. I kind of asked him about the idea of what challenges does it present to an offense when you're facing a defense with 2 real guys at outside corner, like Dax and like DJ. And he talked about the world it opens up for pressures and exotic looks and how it impacts the way a defense can play the run. And there are all these new elements that I think you can start to see the defense feed into based on what they're getting outside, what they're getting in the slot. The linebackers still played bad. I have the negative plays right in front of me. I have linebackers plus Geno Stone, linebacker. And those were the Bengals' negative plays against the Dolphins. And who is responsible for them? And you can add in a lack of splash plays up front on the defensive line outside of Myles Murphy. That's a part of the story of this game as well. A defensive performance that was still incomplete. But the outside corners, the level Jalen Davis is at right now, Jordan Battle and the splash plays and his ability to find the ball, that plus Myles Murphy is what I am optimistic about long-term about this defense.
Yeah, and I think that's where you're at in terms of what they're building around. And this is a bigger discussion that we've had, and we'll have a lot more, obviously, in January, February, and early March. You can find linebackers in free agency that can come in, can be solid. There is a host of them that were signed last year, some to big-ish contracts, some to middle contracts, some to very small contracts that have come in and played really well on really good defenses, players that you will see playing in the postseason, playing at a high level in really important spots that have gotten their teams there. You can find those more than a lot of positions. You're not going to go into
You can't find corners.
No, you're not going to go into free agency and find a top corner. You're not going to go into free agency and find a truly disruptive 3 technique. You're not going to find these probably going to have a hard time outside of finding Trey Hendrickson, finding another Trey Hendrickson, right? Like those guys are just so rare to actually find. But non-premium positions, safeties, linebackers that can be reliable starting level players, slot corner maybe, the Mike Hiltons of the world. You can find those level of players, a safety. You can find those guys in free agency, and that's how you can plug in the holes. But it's finding the rest of the other stuff that we're pointing out here is where they're going to have to build around, and that can be the advantage and why free agency is going to be so important. Let's give Jalen Davis a little bit more love on what was a really important play in this game, and this was the tackle for loss on this pitch to the outside.
The real play of the game for me from Jalen Davis, because terrific job on the interception, 10 out of 10 play. But in this moment, the Bengals defense could have collapsed before halftime, just like they did against the Ravens. Here's Jalen. He follows the play one way to his left when he sees that's where the initial action is going. And then he realizes it's a toss going to his right. And he reverses. He has this savvy, this moxie, this instinct. I'm just going to get there. He sneaks through. He has all of these, and it's all these intangible things that the coaches were talking about today: awareness, instincts, moxie. There's just Mike Hilton stuff there, and he's not Mike Hilton, but 75% of Mike Hilton's a pretty darn good slot corner. And it's stuff like that Jalen has been doing week in, week out. It was his first pick in 8 years, but he's doing this every game. And, Jalen gets the tackle for loss, pounds his chest. Bengals get the stop, going to halftime with the lead at a moment where the game was really vulnerable. One of the, I have this as like one of the 3 true plays that won the Bengals the game was this play.
No question. And I think also throw in Dax Hill here, who, you see him come up
Yes.
setting this outside edge that allows, JD, I think, was going to probably make the play either way. But if there's an edge, I'll go to the sideline view here. 23 coming up on the outside, being ready to get that as well, keeps it so the running back can't accelerate towards the sideline and has to hit the brakes a little bit. And there's 35, Jalen Davis there to pick up. It's a good combo. Both of those guys showing great instincts, seeing the play. We talked about how Mike McDaniel is such a tough matchup because of misdirection and the movement that they do. You see it on a lot of these plays, what we just saw there. And, not being fooled by that, having good eyes and getting to the spot before the back even gets there is a heck of a job. All right. Do you have one more thought before we get into James?
Just some more Jalen Davis love, but he's getting plenty of it, so we can get on to James Casey.
I love it. Let's get on to the RNA marketing coach's office and tight ends coach James Casey. As always, the coach's office is presented by our good friends at R&A Marketing. You should know them by now. Go over to thegrowlerpodcast.com. You can see their work. They've been the architects helping us build our brand in the digital space. They don't just sponsor this segment, but are helping kind of shape our future a little bit. So we chose them because we didn't just want a website. We wanted a strategic partner. You can see their incredible work for yourself. Go visit them at ramarketing.com. They built their reputation as a go-to agency in the really competitive industry of high-end furniture and home goods, but we're with them because their expertise isn't furniture. It's about building premium brands and driving measurable growth. So whether you're in professional services, tech, consumer goods, building a personal brand, the RNA playbook is designed to make you the premier choice in your market. I can't give a bigger endorsement than to say we trust them with our business. Make sure you check them out. And they are the reason that we get to bring you James Casey today. Super excited to bring James Casey into the room with us. James, I mean, everybody's happy today, right? Everybody got a piece of the action. Receivers, tight ends, running backs, didn't matter. Everybody had a big day, and your room was no exception.
Oh, yeah, it was a great day. Going at Sunday, going out to Miami, being able to get the win like that, like you said, everybody's happy. Everybody feels great. Even though, been ups and downs in the season. It's been emotional, it's been a rough year, a lot of aspects of it, but it's still football. It's still competition out there. Just our guys showing that they care, they're playing hard. And it's great when it all comes together like that. And now we just, keep being consistent and keep doing that,
Before we get into the specifics, it's such an interesting room this year. You got really 5 guys who are each good at very specific things. What's been like week to week trying to figure out, what the best way to use these guys is heading into specific games?
Yeah, I'm blessed to be able to coach these guys and just uniquely within our position, the tight end position. I'm obviously very biased as a tight ends coach, and I play tight end, so I love tight ends, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. And the way it's shaked out this year, we got a lot of different types of guys. Obviously there's a big difference between Mike Gesicki and Drew Sample and Cam Grandy and Noah Fant. Like they're all different styles of players. So it's fun we always have stuff to do in our meeting room, and Zach and Coach Pitcher and Scotty have done a great job of they really pride themselves, and they do a great job, I believe, like around the league compared to some other places, of getting those guys in good situations and accentuating what they do really well and putting them in good spots. We got to be able to do it all as a tight end, but they give my guys, like, put them in great situations so they can go out there and perform like they did on Sunday.
Drew is somebody that I think every single time we talk to any coach on the offensive staff, he gets mentioned, because there's a feeling that he doesn't get a lot of the credit. He doesn't do a lot of the high profile stuff, but there's a reason he's as longest tenured anybody in the building. It's because he brings a lot of value. What is the biggest thing that Drew does that people wouldn't see? We got to see a little bit of him yesterday out with the ball in his hands, but what is the biggest thing that he does that makes him so valuable to what you guys do?
I think trust. Like, you can trust him that it's an NFL offense. We're NFL tight ends. It's really complex. A lot of the stuff that's going on. There's run game, the pass protection, the routes, like so much information, my guys got to know at tight end. And he prides himself. He puts so much work into it each week. He does all the dirty stuff that you're not even going to recognize him. And if you're not recognizing him at times, like in the run game and stuff, that probably means he's doing a really good job. So he's blocking these defensive ends, which are some of the the freaks of the freaks athletes, and he doesn't get a lot of recognition. So like when you guys ask me to do this, I'm always fired up to more than anybody, Drew Sample, just because how hard he works, how smart he is, how unselfish he is. Like he puts all the time in and does it the right way. And there's a reason he's in year 7 and he plays a lot of snaps, and it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And I don't know how the PFF rankings and stuff go either, but obviously I'm not paying attention to how they're grading those guys because I just know I watched the film. Like he's been doing a great job, and he doesn't get a lot of credit around the league. But I think the guys that really know ball and they're really watching it, they'll watch him play and they know he's a dang good player.
I have a dumb question on the big catch that we're about to talk about. Drew is, I guess, for lack of a better term, picking up the blitzer and the A gap. Over the last few years, we've started to see you guys use Drew in the backfield more. Were tight ends in the backfield doing pass protection, stuff like that when you were playing? Is this a trend that's picked up over the last 10 years? How has that all fit together?
It's unique. Like you have to have a guy that you can trust to do it, basically. Like it doesn't happen all the time. It's, most of the time you have your running backs back there in 6-man protection. So you have your 5 offensive linemen, and then you have the running back who's back there, and the quarterback's directing all the protection of who he thinks is going to blitz. So the line's blocking those guys, but the defenses are good and they trick you sometimes. So that they may blitz another guy, and then the running back's got to pick him up. And sometimes you'll have teams though that don't have great running backs that can pass protect. So if you have a tight end that can do it, it's just another way to add value. And also you may have some situations like us, like Chase Brown is a great blocker, and so is Samaje Perine. Like we do have really good backs that can pick up pressures, but also Chase Brown's a really good route runner. So Drew being unselfish is kind of added value to the offense where he can get back there and do some of the pass protection stuff and know all that, and allows Chase Brown to get out there and run routes like I think he scored a touchdown on a quick out route because we were able to stay in 11 personnel and have a tight end back there protecting. And it's kind of like it is right now. Like I think the Falcons do a little bit with Charlie Warner. Like there's some teams that do it. You got to have a really smart guy that takes pride in it, and and like just you got to you got to be willing to do it. And you got to want to do it. You got to be obsessed with it because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in pass protection with different fronts and blitzes, and to be on top of all that stuff takes a lot of work. And if you have the right type of guy in your offense, and you want to get a little creative with it, that's kind of how we've progressed too with Drew. And I was able to do that a little bit in my career too. And that's probably why I ended up coaching, just because I took a lot of pride in it and just loved. It's fascinating. The blocking aspect of football is fascinating, especially the pass protection. So him just adding value, getting out there and doing it and he's doing a great job the last couple of years. And credit to Zach and Coach Pitcher for utilizing him in that way.
Well, let's give him his shine. Let's bring the play up. This was reminiscent of the game against Buffalo a couple years ago at home on Sunday Night Football, where Drew had kind of a late release and Burrow is just able to find him. I guess speak to what the mental progression is on this play and how much of this is backyard versus how much of this is sort of taught for Drew, as I'll let this run.
Yeah, there's very complex stuff that's going on right here. We're in third down, so they know we're passing the ball is number one thing. So when the defense knows you're passing the ball, they can get in exotic fronts and they can do exotic pressures because they're not worried about being gap sound to stop the run. So that's why you see all these crazy fronts and these crazy blitzes, because they're not worried about a run play because it's 3rd and 10. And we're also in a field goal fringe situation. So we're close to Evans' field goal range. So a lot of times in those situations, not just Miami, but every defense, that may be the time where they do zero pressure or they do one of their exotic blitzes to try to knock you out of field goal range to keep points off the board. So Zach and offense coordinator Coach Pitts, they just, it's obviously well thought out that we were expecting in that situation that they could bring, an exotic pressure. So that's why we had Drew in the game there. And we also have Mike in the game out there, as you see him, fly motion and running route to be prepared if they do bring one of those crazy pressures. Because at times teams will bring pressures that, if you're in 6-man protection with 5-0 linemen and a running back, some teams will bring a pressure and it won't even be zero. It'll be some kind of like fire zone or hot zone where you can't protect it in 6-man protection just because they'll bring like 3 guys to one side or something. So you have to be you need to be in situations like this or you'll be hot. So we were anticipating they could bring one of those pressures. So that's why Drew's in the game. And then this is a very common third down defensive front that teams utilize. And we call it Abby, but it's just 2 linebackers in the A gap. You know, they got their nickel 4-2. So 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and then the 5 DBs. And then it's a split front with 2-3 techniques, 2 DNs, and then they put the 2 linebackers in the A gap. Now, you know, that also obviously puts a lot of stress on your offense when you got 6 guys standing at the line of scrimmage like that. With Burrow back there, you know, if they bring all of them, you know, we got to make sure we're protected. And we have a lot of specific, you know, calls to this front, and especially in this type of protection that we're in with Drew and Samaje back there. So Drew being the bigger guy as a tight end, he's the one that adjusts if he needs to, because if a linebacker's staying in the A gap like that at the line of scrimmage, you can't just try to, you know, it's really difficult. Teams will do it, but it's difficult if you're going to try to pick up that blitz standing 5 yards next to the quarterback, because now you know you're going to go meet him, but he's going to hit you in the backfield a little bit. So we tell our guys in this situation to go ahead and move up. That way, if he does pressure, you're not as close to the quarterback, so Burrow's got more time and you're away from him more. So, you know, obviously the center is going to tell everybody where they're going to, and then so Sample knows what Ted's doing with his protection calls and where he's going to. So he's aligned opposite of where he needs to pick up the protection. And then they're in 2-man, so you know we do see a decent amount of that with the receivers that we have. So it allows a safe. They're in man coverage, but there's a safety that they can basically double. Most times they double Jamar and they double T, so it leaves the other guys one-on-one. So the guy that has him was 25 right there in man coverage, but they're at times they'll like rush to cover. So they'll got you in coverage, but they'll cover you as they're blitzing because you got to stop and block them. So they ain't got to worry about covering you if it feels like they're blitzing. So 25 has him, but Drew being smart, and this is an amazing play. There's a lot that goes into this play. So Drew has 25 right here, and then 25 recognizes Burrow scrambling. So 25, you know, falls off to try to stop Joe from rushing for it. And Sample is smart enough to understand that, okay, I'm blocking, I'm pass protection. At that point, when he leaves, he knows, okay, now it's Burrow started scrambling, so it's better for me to be a viable option for him, to be able to check it down. And just unbelievable by Burrow right here. I don't even know how he sees him, because, you know, he's scrambling to the right and Drew's, you know, way over to his left. But as you watch, you know, if you're just watching Burrow right here, the fact that he even sees him is pretty incredible, because I think his route was supposed to be like way over to the left side, but because of his protection responsibilities, he was in the A gap. And so just unbelievable play all around. Like, great job by Burrow finding him, and then just great job by Drew being a veteran tight end when he catches this right here. And this is, you know, like life of the tight end. I say, like, watching around the league a lot of times, tight ends are notorious for self-tackleization. They'll just tackle themselves. If you're a young tight end, like right there, their legs will just stop working. Y'all seen it probably hundreds of times. They'll be running, their legs just stop working, they fall down. So now that he's a veteran guy and experience, he's got the confidence now to just catch it and just run without falling down, which is remarkable. And that he got 27 yards right here. And y'all know how hard it is in the NFL to get that much of a gain in an NFL football game with these elite defensive players out there. And then I love at the end of it, he takes a little shot, like, you know what happens, and just pops right up like nothing happened. Like, you'll see other guys lay on the ground forever and acting like they're dead. No, he's up immediately because he's a tough, like, old school player and blue collar guy. So I tell him all the time, like, Drew, eventually the city is going to, like, really fall in love with you, because they're going to understand all the, like, what type of guy you are, all the work that you put into it, how much you care. Like, if you're just a man out there, I don't know how you don't, like, respect and just appreciate what Drew does out there.
Yeah.
First of all, I appreciate you raising awareness for self-tackleization, because now I recognize it goes criminally under-discussed.
It's out there.
Yes.
There's that moment where Drew releases and Burrow finds him, and they're on the same page. Of course, they have great chemistry. They've played together for 6 years. When tight ends come in the building, how do you explain to them, be ready, because when you're not expecting the ball, Burrow's going to flick it over like that and there's a huge play. How do you explain that to a guy?
It's really like Burrow basically explains it to him, just how
Yeah.
he plays and how he does things. So they learn really quickly when you're out there, like everything's going to be available. He can check plays, and he's not going to like go up to you and explain things to you like in every little bit of detail. We're professional. They're professional athletes. They're professional men. Like Burrow has high standards, and he expects that if we have a play called or we have a potential check that could come up, that's your job. He expects you to know it. So, and I love how he just does it. Like a lot of it's just not even being verbal about it. He just, the way he does it, and he'll check something. And if you don't get it, you don't get it in a practice setting or something. And, by the body language stuff, he'll let the guys know, like, hey, this is your job. You got to know these things. You got to be ready at all times. You can never get surprised by the football. Like, even right there, like obviously that we're not drawing up that play intending to throw the ball to Drew, but the way it worked out, he was able to get the ball, and being a veteran guy that you can trust, he was ready for it to make the play. And that's it. It's NFL. There's so much stuff going on out there. There's so much money involved with just the players and the organizations. And but in the day, there's 11 men out there that are going out there competing, trying to show that they're better than the other team. And it's I operate as if with the tight ends, like I'm working with these guys. It's not like I'm the dictator guy. Like it's their career. They want to win more than anybody. So as far as like their relationship with Burrow and making sure that they know everything that's going on, I just tell them, like, it's on you guys to make sure y'all know like what the checks are, like what Burrow wants from you guys. And obviously I'm helping every way I possibly can with your tools and tactics and techniques and how we can improve. But at the end of the day, y'all are the ones out there doing it. So y'all be on the same page. If the players take ownership in it, that's obviously the way that things get. You can be really, really great on offense is when they start talking to each other and they start like coaching each other up. That's when you can have some really special offense.
Well, we've had, I'm sure you're loving this, the trend across the NFL right now. We're seeing a lot more 12. We're seeing 13 become a thing. It's like it seems like everybody is coming back around to recognizing the value of keeping defenses on their heels a little bit. And you guys get a touchdown out of 12 yesterday with Cam Grandy and Drew Sample, and I know you mentioned it before we came on. You wanted to talk about this one. I think I said after this play happened, that might be the biggest hole I've ever seen in a red zone run around here in forever. I can't remember. It was that open. It's not supposed to be that easy down there. Talk me through what happened on this touchdown run by Chase Brown.
Yeah, so it's 1st and 10 from I believe the 12-yard line, and we go 12 personnel. And, they defensively, they don't know what we're doing. We got Cam Grandy and Drew out there. So you would anticipate that they're thinking we could run, but maybe they have data off of our self-scout that they believe we're going to pass here. Who knows what their strategy was. But they stayed nickel defense, which is a really big deal in the NFL. Like if you're in 12 personnel talking to the tight ends, like it is very, very important that they know if it's base defense or nickel defense for their targets and their IDs and the run game and protection stuff. So they stayed nickel defense. So, Drew and Cam know that. And so they know who they're going to be targeted. And it's for tight ends, it's like for us taking pride in if they want to stay nickel defense to our 12 personnel, like we got to have pride and say that's disrespectful and we need to be able to run the ball when they do that. Because typically if you go base defense to 12, you got 5 linemen, 2 tight ends. You got 7 on offense that can block. And then you got 7 on defense that can block. So you got, even matchups. And then, may the best man win. But then when they go nickel, now they got 6. They got nickel 4. They got 4 D linemen, 2 linebackers. And then now they have a nickel linebacker, basically nickel Sam or nickel Will. And then they have the 2 safeties. So depending on what the scheme is, you typically are going to have a tight end now matched up on a nickel or a safety. And that should be a huge advantage for the offense. It's not all the time like that around the league, but it should be. You're an NFL tight end. You get paid a lot of money to block, and they get paid a lot of money. The nickels and the safeties, they tackle and they play in the line of scrimmage sometimes. But where their bread is buttered most of the time is in covering guys. So when we get those situations, like it's got to be a huge advantage for us. Like happens here, where Drew. I won't get into details of like what the calls are and those kind of things, but it's a mid zone play to the right side, and Cam sifts backside, which you obviously have keepers off of that and play actions off of that they got to respect. and he's just trying to cut the defense backside to make sure that defensive end can't get there. And he's got the first guy outside the tackle. And then Drew's got multiple things that can happen here with his calls and how they're targeted here. But really, essentially, it's Ted and the right side, the right guard, right tackle, that they have to communicate so they know who they're working to on this. We know the play, the defense doesn't. So we got to communicate who's going to who. So Drew makes a call here that he's going to go through to the safety, and there's a lot of technique that goes involved in doing this. But as you see it plays out, you can see, he kind of flashes the DN. So the DN thinks that Drew's blocking him. So he kind of puts his hands up. Now that helps Mims' block because he's not ready to engage the tackle. And he can't get knocked off. So as he flashes him, he's got to slip and get skinny through there. And then his angle to the safety is very, very important too. You'll see tight ends around the league, jacking this up a lot because they won't get there in time. They don't understand how fast you got to do it, or they'll take a bad angle and they won't square up like he's doing. So he squares it up, giving the running back a two-way go. And after you do it, enough as a veteran player like Drew, you don't know where the ball's at because you're just blocking and you're running your feet and you're trying to, you don't know where it's going to hit at sometimes. So you got to kind of give him a two-way go, and then you don't know what's happening behind you. So you always got to be ready to, like right there, you got to be ready to let go too, because you'll see holding calls get called right there. So he does. It's just textbook play right here. Teach tape of like how this should look. Dalton, the right guard, is doing an unbelievable job on the three technique. Ted and Dylan backside, as you see their block on this 2-eye to the Mike linebacker, do just phenomenal job. OB's doing it. It's one of those plays. It worked out just like it did in practice on this one. We practice it, and when it works out like that in a game, just like you practice, that's, as a coach, that's about as good as it can get. Just the feeling of like, okay, yeah, we did a great job right there and got a touchdown.
Almost looked like routes on air, the way where there was no one really even within this. But yeah, you're right. The savviness and understanding that watching you talk through sample, getting to that second level there is that's the stuff that I think that why I really appreciate you coming on and showing and that type of stuff. Cause I think the average viewer, myself, like the stuff that you don't see you're right. No one would even think about that, but it really was the key to the entire play was his ability to sell that, get up to the next level and run his feet so Chase can just run to all the glory. The running backs get all that glory, and Drew just has to go over there and give him a headbutt afterwards.
Yes. I appreciate you saying that too. Like, the blocking aspect of it, this is my life, so I'm like obsessed with it. I love it. I think it's one of the most fascinating things on earth is like the blocking structures in the NFL and how much goes into that and how specific it is. But I do think like I think a lot of people would be like really intrigued to learn like how much goes into the blocking aspects of the run game and the pass protection and the techniques and the angles, because everything is so specific NFL-wise because you got 32 teams and, it's $1 billion industry. These players are making millions of dollars. You got 53-man roster. You only got 11 guys out there, though. Every single play is so important and it's so specific because we're talking livelihood out there of jobs and people keeping jobs. And really, you're talking the whole city, too. Everybody that's a Bengals fans, like that roots for us, like we understand that. We know what we're doing. It's a game, but there's a lot of people that are counting on us to go out there and perform and play well and win games. So a lot of pride in it too, for our city, for our team. So the amount that goes into just, even if you're just talking like one run play based off of the front they're in, the defense's alignment, the defense's for me as a tight end coach, it's, watching like the defensive ends, like how their stance is, like, the difference in like if he's a 9 technique or like a tight 9 or 6 or 7 or what kind of stance he has, because your angles are so important as a blocker. Or if you take one bad step, these defensive linemen are so elite with just their tools. If you take one bad step, it doesn't matter anymore. You're done. You're gonna get killed. If you take a bad angle, if you're laid off the snap, you're gonna get killed. If you have bad hands, if you duck, if you don't get there fast enough, like, and it's so hard to be a good blocker. I think you just see around the league, like for me, as I watch around the league, it does seem like the blocking is going down just a little bit because there's so much that goes into it and we don't get enough time. We don't get as much time to practice anymore with like full padded practices. So guys like Drew to me are incredibly valuable that can understand all those things. And he's not perfect. Nobody's perfect out there, but the guys that can be consistent and you can trust that they're going to do their job and take good angles, and they're going to give you a chance on each run play, each protection to to be successful on that play without getting you killed, like just swinging and missing a lot, because those kill drives more than anything. If a tight end swings and misses on a DN on a run play and it's a TFL, now you're in second long. Now you know what, you throw a screen or like some quick game. Now you're in third and long, and it's really hard in the NFL third and long. So just one guy missing his block could be the end of your drive, and you only get 10 to 12 drives a game. And so all these things are incredibly important. And it's unsung with the tight ends a lot of times. Like they don't get a lot of credit for it, but there's a lot of stuff they're doing out there that's really difficult.
Well, I want to thank you for properly singing their praises here with us and being so generous with your time. I hope it helps. I hope it helps people understand. And I just, I think it's such an important part of the game, and it is one that gets very much overlooked. We didn't even have time to give Mike Gesicki his love on his touchdown pass, but that's okay. He gets too much love as he's out here doing all the fun stuff, catching passes and getting all the glory and doing the gritty dance. Let's talk about blocking and the real stuff that matters. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, when you guys contact me about this, I'm always fired up just because.
James, what was your longest catch?
I think I might have had like a 61 yard or something. I was just, I tell the tight end, sometimes it's better to be lucky than it is to be good. And if you're lucky twice in the game, then you're going to be good. You're good in that game. Because just like happens, like it's fascinating to me, the tight ends, they're busting their tails. They're working really hard. They got a lot of important jobs out there that they got to do. But really just what it is, it's like when I get a chance to talk to you guys or they get talked about, it's because they catch the ball. When they catch the ball, that's when people see them. And that's a very important part of the game. There's a huge premium on the guys that can catch it and they can get first downs and touchdowns. But to actually play in, play out, day in, day out to win games, a lot of the tight end stuff is the guys that you can trust, that can block, and that can be disciplined. A lot of it's just human nature stuff too. The guys that are just like disciplined people, unselfish, don't need credit. So selfishly, I believe the tight ends that can block and have shown they can block in the NFL for a little while are some of the best men that you're ever going to come across. Just because they're tough, they're smart, they're gritty. Like they should be able to be like CEOs of companies and do. And I don't know, I'm being biased, but I do think like Drew, I think he could be successful in whatever he does after he's done playing football.
I would agree that there are certainly, you have a room of very good guys. Certainly in any dealings I know that I've had with them, it's been a pleasure. And this has been a pleasure too. James, thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge and your passion for it. I certainly appreciate it. And I know that our readers and listeners and viewers do as well. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys. You have a great day.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks again to James for hopping into the Coach's Office, presented by our good friends at RNA Marketing. Reminder, if your business is ready to stop tinkering and start building a serious professional brand that gets results, you need to talk to the team at RNA Marketing. They're the real deal. We trust them with our brand. It's the best endorsement I can give. So visit them today at ramarketing.com. That's ramarketing.com. Schedule a consultation and tell them the Growler Podcast sent you. All right, Charlie, now let's move on and get to a little bit of NFL Pro potpourri. Anything that in your rewatch stood out that you wanted to make sure we point out before we get out of here?
It stood out significantly from my game watch. It wasn't like significant enough for me to like write about it, but I still think it deserves mention in a forum like this. The Bengals between 2020 and 2024, really actually the bye week in 2025, never did two running back sets. Like never. I believe there were 28. There were years where they didn't do it. There were years where they did it like 3 plays a year, and that included a kneel down. Like even going back to the Joe Mixon, Giovanni Bernard days, like those were two of the Bengals' best players. And every offseason, it was like, what could they get on the field together? And Zach Taylor would be like, sure. And then they ran more 11 personnel. But now, since the bye week, the Samaje Perine Chase Brown package is real. It's significant. It's still not something they major in, but it's as real of a minor as the, for example, Cam Grandy Drew Sample package that we just spoke about with James Casey. Them going big with two blockers is something they didn't used to do. Now they can dabble in it. Now they can also dabble in two running back sets, and those two running back sets, and they actually opened the game in one. Also let Chase Brown line up in the slot. And so to wrap up here, that brings me to this stat. Last year, Chase Brown had 6 catches out of the slot. 2 of them were very nondescript plays. This year, he has 8 catches out of the slot, 5 of those since Thanksgiving, 2 yesterday for touchdowns. Last year, he ran 24 total routes out of the slot. This year, he's run 36, 14 since Thanksgiving, 4 more yesterday. And Dan Pitcher was saying this today. There's some slot receiver, just some true slot receiver for Chase Brown, a guy who couldn't make a catch in practice when he was a rookie. Now, like, you could put him in the slot and he could really do some stuff.
And it's a weapon because, you heard James Casey talk about, when you can be in 11 personnel, but you have your best blocker next to Burrow, and then you're kind of in 10 because you're out there with 4 receivers. With the way Chase Brown runs like a slot receiver with what you've got. I mean, there's just a lot of different things that you can do. And when you do it with Samaje, he's a good blocker. You can use his downhill, but it's really, we saw this in camp and in OTAs, a lot more of, okay, they're trying out Chase Brown truly as a receiver more because they're seeing so much development. That's a testament to him and what he's done over the course of his off seasons. But they're really seeing that, like, let's get him out there. And then I think in the first half of the season, when there was just such a mess in the run game, let's just get the run game back on track. They kind of tabled some of the extra Chase Brown stuff, and without Burrow as well, like there's a lot of things going on where they weren't really ready to take that next step. Then as Burrow's come back, it's like, okay, let's get out there and build off that chemistry that those guys have and start utilizing that stuff as everything else settled down. And I think it's fun to see that. I think this was what they wanted it to look like all year for Chase Brown. It just kind of got sidetracked, like so many things got sidetracked this year.
Nobody wants to have another conversation about Zach Taylor's contract. We're not going to do that. But the most common question kind of surrounding that was, will these guys change? If there's no changes to the people in these jobs, are they willing to change? Like, truly, it's stuff like this that I point to. And we spent a bunch of time earlier on this show criticizing what the defense really did. But stuff like this shows they're willing to change. They're willing to, hey, we've never done 2 running back stuff before. We're going to try it now because we think it gives us a better chance to win. Like, say what you want about this coaching staff and how it's failed to fix the defense, but the coaching staff actually is willing to do different things than they've ever done before. And that, I think, is like a real trait that they have. Some of the changes, all of them on defense until recently, had been really nowhere near good enough. But they are willing to do new stuff. And so that is something that's on my radar heading into the offseason.
Yeah, before we get out, I want to do justice to a play that we had queued up for James Casey, but he was so good on the other plays, we didn't get to it. I do want to touch on the Gesicki touchdown in his return. He went out there as a captain, back in Miami. He didn't want to get too much after the game into why it was so important to him, but we know that it wasn't always great between him and Mike
throw to
McDaniel.
Tight ends.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
I mean, look, and so I think for that fact, it certainly felt like, this was going to be an important one. And then, so this play happens and, I want to point out this is so much, you watch him just go right up the seam here. The gravity of the star receivers being next to Mike Gesicki is really on display here as he comes up the seam. But you see people be drawn to T. There's Jamar goes in motion, right? They get a man-tell here. Double, right on him. And who's being tucked so that ball can get over top of the linebacker there? T. T's on the other side over there. Let me go back to the wide view. If you watch, that is opened up by Jamar and T, and then you have Gesicki's incredibly wide catch radius that goes up over top and does it. It's just the advantage for a guy like that to play next to those 2 guys and then have the chemistry that he's developed with Burrow is why they wanted Mike G. That's why Mike G was a need. It's because of stuff like this, and he gets to have a moment like that. But yeah, you really see them being able to take advantage of his catch radius. And then, of course, you get the wave hello there at the end. Didn't get the full gritty, which he said to me yesterday, probably the longest gritty he's ever done. I think he was on a gritty adrenaline rush as he pulled that one out back in Miami. But yeah, the wave just came out of nowhere, he said in the moment. But the long gritty, he'd had that one in the back of his mind for a long time.
Separately, Dan Pitcher pulled out the joke today talking to us. It set the world record for the longest gritty of all time. To which I said to Dan, how has no Bengals fan been on this? Like, how has no one done like a
Yeah.
7-mile gritty for charity? But here's my idea to you, the listener. Would you like the record? All you have to beat is Mike Gesicki's 30 yards. So
yeah, if you can beat it, you can have. Let's get the the Guinness people. They come over. They've got the book and it's very specific documentation. They'll do it for anything. Let's get them over here. Let's just test it out.
I'm glad actually we're onto this conversation because here's my pen writing this in my notebook for Wednesday because I'm going to ask him this. Does Mike Gesicki just want to be the bad gritty guy? Because clearly, like when he got here, it was like Jamar will teach him, and we're like. But is it a funnier bit to him to be the guy with the bad gritty? If so, as a bad dancer myself, I really respect that.
Yeah, going all the way into the bit. It's like, look, it's like any comedian will tell you, or any person that has like, look, I'm bald, so the first thing I want to do is make fun of my own baldness, right? Like you just got to do it. That's the only thing you could do. Gritty's like, Gesicki's like, look, I can't do this, but I want to show that I can have fun, so I'm going to do a bad version of it. That becomes my thing. I now own my own fault and turn it into a strength. And that's what I appreciate about Mike. He wants to show he's here for a good time. And if you can't do a great gritty, do the worst one. That's the way to go. I'm fully in support of this. It's fantastic. Let's get everybody out, have a bad gritty off, see who can go the longest. They just go back and forth and like run gassers up and down Paycor Stadium's field until there's only one person standing and they get the record. I think that's where we go.
I don't even have the coordination to do a gritty. I just don't get how the legs work. And so I'm out.
You're already out, and that's fair. I do not plan on participating in any way, shape, or form. But if you want,
it's not even funny. It's just true. I just can't do it.
Maybe we'll do this. We'll have to do this at our live show at BetMGM. Maybe on Sunday. We'll see whoever can do a bad gritty the longest. Maybe we just put them out on the street. They'll just be going up and down the street in front of Great American Ballpark, and then whoever's the last person to be going gets tickets to the Browns game. That could be a good place to go.
Good job.
We'll have to have them sign a waiver first. I mean, I'm just concerned about the liability here.
Maybe this is why everyone on the Bengals' ankles are hurting.
Yeah, that's true. Who knew it was going to have so much ankle problems? Do we ever get after? We're going to get after the medical staff about this. Why don't you guys take care of people's ankles better? Do you guys add a tape? What happened? We always got to blame the medical staff.
Blame medical staff. All right. Yeah.
Thanks everybody for watching. Yeah, we did everything. We did everything we have today. I appreciate everybody for watching and for listening. Be back with Mo tomorrow. So plenty more to come your way. Keep it locked in to the feed and make sure you're getting our alerts for our shows. 8:00 every single week on Monday nights. Rewatch shows up for you to enjoy. So we hope you guys are getting all those alerts and follow and subscribe and tell your friends, all that stuff. So, all right, have a good one, everybody. We'll talk to you later.